Hi everyone! So we're going to play all through book one. Let's tune first of all. Tune a bit.
I like Baxter. Oh, I suppose
I'm going to move into the middle in a minute. Alright, let's have a bow. Do you want to come here? Thank you. Okay, so we're going to play our twinkles again. We have time. I'm going to try and keep the talking to the minimum. And so we're thinking, just find your balance point for starters. It's lower than most of us think, she says, putting her finger too high, or rather too low. And so for the children, because they have this innate relaxation in their arms, and because it's more difficult for them to control fine motor skills than it is for gross motor skills. So big muscles are easier to use when you're very tiny than small ones. That's why we hold the bow like this to start off with, is because it's bigger, less intricate. So this arm movement, so if you just hold your violins and your bows in your left hand and kind of find this, it's almost like vertical movement that you're just kind of thinking about if you were really low in the bow, that kind of feeling. It's being driven from the upper arm and it's not opening and closing, but it's the whole arm, because the bows are going to be very short.
So when we explain to them,
So relax your shoulder, hang on, just let me do this and then we'll talk about your question. So it's almost like this, but then obviously this way. And it's really difficult for us to do, especially as violinists, but it's avoiding that opening and closing makes it much easier for the children at first, and then we extend obviously the bows during Twinkle Theme at first and then the other pieces.
I'll be with that one then.
There's no such thing as doing it wrong, it's just a different way.
Yeah.
You know, you're here to learn how to be a Suzuki teacher, so that's good. If you already knew it all, then you would be chucking your money out the window. So we're just, Daphne, did you have a question?
sorry. It was when we explained to them, because I always use like the karate thing, but
So I think you can just do that a bit later. So for this, there's hardly any explanation anyway. You just show them, and they do it. And because you're starting on open strings, you know, they just kind of have it by being shown and by imitating, and by you doing it with them.
And they do it at the balance point, do they?
Yeah, so all of the twinkles, you're starting at the balance point and you're not going higher than the middle, and some even smaller than that. So that kind of, yeah. So here's your introduction. So think upper arm. Bend you've got here, that if you're going to release the muscles of the upper arm and the elbow, your arm is going to be quite heavy to get the sound naturally rather than from working. And that means that you have to be stable here. The little ones have no flexibility in their bows. They can't do any wrist flexibility, hand flexibility. It's just the whole arm moving like this to start with, and then we add all of that in as we go on. Very good. relaxation here. So for the children, we would have been doing open strings long bows while they're learning the ones that we've just played, so that when they play Twinkle for the first time, it's not the first time they've done the longer bows. But they do stopped bows because legato is harder than staccato, not really staccato, detached at this stage. So that's why when we played it earlier this morning, they start like this. So when we're demonstrating that, that's what we're going to do. And we're just going to do that and then talk a little bit about bow holds and stuff. So, sorry. Where we really dig into all the details of what we're doing, and a lot of the pre-twinkle teaching points we will spend time on too. Well, we will spend a lot of time on all of the pre-twinkle teaching points, but essentially, so the variations, you're going between a balance point in the middle, and then for twinkle theme you're going using half the bow, the middle half, so between the balance point and sort of 3/4 of the way up. And then as they progress through book one, they will learn how to use the rest of the bow. This is quite easy to get to the tip of the bow by kind of long go. And then Happy Farmer is the first time they've come below the balance point. So by the time they finish book one, they can use all of the bow, but it's a very gradual process because it's much easier to control. Yay me, I just didn't say obviously. It's much easier to control the smaller bows in terms of the tone than it is the longer ones, especially at speed. So that's why it's little by little, gradually exploring. And I think the other thing I wanted to say is for us as proficient violinists, it can feel when you first start to try and like remove the flexibility, it can feel really tense and horrible. But it's a learning process. It's a bit like when you first start to do vibrato, it's very difficult not to vibrate all the time suddenly. Like, even I see it in professional orchestras all the time. You know, if you do it like this is no vibrato and you see these people, like, you know, it's hard to unlearn something that you've learned. So when we are thinking about how to demonstrate to the kids this very beginner arm movement, beginner bow strokes, it might feel quite like tense and uncomfortable to you, but just stick with it and it will then become, it's about isolating different muscle groups, and so it will become something that you can turn on and off easily. Like if I was going to play Twinkle Theme in a concert, I wouldn't choose to play it like that. I would have all the flexibility of the vibrato and everything, but you know, when I'm showing a student or a group of students how I want them to do it, it's obviously confusing if I'm doing this and they're like, can't do that yet. Yeah. Okay, good. So let's go on. Okay, so what piece comes next? Would anybody like to tell us? Very good. So when they first started, so today we're going to play all the pieces like they will the first way they learn it, and then as they refine it, then obviously it changes. Obviously. So it changes as you refine it. So like you were at first will be the same detached bows, and we're changing the speed, not the length. So it's not half whole, half but it's fast, slow, fast, slow, and that's the same in Twinkle Theme. Okay, starting from the balance point. Lovely. balance of how the arm needs to sit on the string is really important and tricky for them to learn. So we just add that in as a little bit of practice. And then once they're doing lots of retakes, they tend to take them off. Okay, so the next piece, Iram, do you remember the next piece?
Songs after me.
That's not remembering, that's reading. And just take your left hand, don't just copy me because we were all different ways around. Left hand and put your right elbow in the left hand. And can you just try and relax your arm weight into your left hand as much as possible so you can feel that relaxation. So when we're playing the violin and we want a deep sound, we have two options. You can use your muscles and your strength to push into the sound, or you can use the weight of your arm, which I'm hoping you're feeling like, oh, that's quite heavy. I mean, obviously your arm is going to be a different weight to your arm, to my arm. But, you know, generally there's a lot of muscle and flesh here that if we can relax into the string will give you a deep sound without any work. So this is the idea behind the Suzuki kind of released elbow. It's important for us to remember and recognize Dr. Suzuki used to try new things all the time. So if anyone ever says to you, Dr. Suzuki did this, what they actually mean, whether they know it or not, is at the point at which he said this, that's what he was doing. But he was very famous for trying new things all the time. And lots of people who went to train with him, like most of them are not around anymore, but the older generation of first level Suzuki teachers who came out of Japan, he maybe wasn't telling them that he was trying new things all the time. I think he did actually, but they didn't realise, some of them. So they would come home with this like, okay, Dr. Suzuki says really low elbow, we've got to play with, you know, like, what are those things, like mats? Placemats, like, you know, under your arm to get it really low. This is something that he was trying partly when he was very elderly and he was getting deaf and he couldn't hear the sound that he used to hear, and he didn't realise, this is the story. So he was trying to go deeper and deeper into the string, and it was lower elbow all the time. And then there was a generation of Suzuki teachers who have like ridiculously just so much tension from kind of trying to play like this. But that is not what he mostly was teaching, and that's certainly not what I'm teaching or anyone I know here is teaching. The elbow is about releasing the weight of the arm, wherever that means you end up. So this is a really brilliant exercise for you each, not necessarily for your students, depends on the level of them, but to be able to find that, what is it, how can I hold my hand, how can I hold my wrist up, because obviously if you just relax your arm, then it's just here, you can't do anything with it. But you need to be able to release the muscles you can release to get the weight in the string, and then engage the muscles you have to engage to use the bow.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really important thing, and we will talk a lot about the elbow and the weight of the arm and how that can be used to help us. Okay, so do you know what piece is next? Well done, very good. So this is the piece that they start either in review or first time round, depends on the child, start to play more legato. So we'll play it a little bit more legato. And we have the first echo. about how we create tone and at what point they get, yes, that gets developed in different ways. So I use the tone triangle. Can somebody just turn the computer to place this, please? Doing my right arm workout. Okay. So the tone triangle is obviously simplified. I'm going to stand by that, obviously. It's a simplified version of how we make sound. There is more to it, but in a basic way, what are we thinking about for making tone and changing tone, i.e. dynamics?
Bow speed and weight.
Excellent. Speed of bow.
And pressure or weight.
Weight. And for Suzuki, we want to use weight, not pressure. And we're thinking about elbow and hand and how they contribute. And then the last one?
Near to the bridge.
Yeah,
Near.
well done. Distance from bridge. Which is also called the contact point. And some people talk about tracks. I talk about tracks. Some people talk about the ringing road, the Chrysler highway. Lots of different ways to talk about where the bow should be. So in early book one, well, in most of book one, we're looking for a steady amount of weight and a similar amount of hugging the bow. That we don't want it to be completely floppy in the hand, but we want to be engaged in the bow hand a bit. We want a heavy elbow, and the distance from the bridge is the same. We don't start changing the contact point until book two. So the speed of bow is how you're doing dynamics early on. So all book one dynamics are mostly speed. And the children and some parents do need it explaining that speed of bow is the same as length of bow.
Okay.
And I prefer speed because the length of your bow is however it is when it comes out of the case.
Yeah.
You can't actually change the length of your bow. But of course you can change the length of the bow that you're using, so it's kind of slightly semantic. Okay. Let's play some more. Do you know what's next, Jonathan?
I'll call it a treasure.
Very good. Our first mountain piece. Very tricky for most students. And we will talk about how to make it feel like it's not tricky by attacking one thing at a time when we get to teaching points. Okay. And another echo. practice just resting on the string at the end. Very nice. And then long, long ago, which is the first time we have D string. And try and think about what else is new as you play. Not completely new, like we've never done it before, but definitely a bigger challenge in that piece.
String crossing on the same string. I mean, on different strings. Sorry, I mean like 1 to 1.
Yeah, the hopping one over to the D string. Good. Yes, excellent. Ira?
What's a challenge for a child? I don't know, that connected feeling. Like
Yeah, it's
how
more
they did
legato.
it before. Yeah,
It's more legato. This is definitely, if they're playing Go Tonight Radio a bit detached, then you want this to be legato. And do you think
Maybe using more of the
yeah, maybe not. Well, certainly we're going to have to go to the tip if they're not already. They might already be, but the bow speeds change so much more.
Yes.
So in before we've had like it's a bit faster, and we just have 1 minute, and you're at the tip already.
Yeah.
Whereas here, if you keep your bow the same, you'll be in the middle, and then they run out of bow. So it's about making sure that they can use the faster mode. So they've got the whole minim, the whole bow for the minim there.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Allegro. This is lots of people's favourites. And just because I'd like you to hear it, I'm going to play a second part that I wrote for my advanced students, which is really fun. Yeah, so I'll give you the introduction, but then I'll play a different part. Oh, you're on the E string.
Something else. Sorry.
Don't worry, don't worry.
Oh, sorry. And they've got all of those retakes. And the thing that I didn't say is this is martelé, introduction of martelé bowing, so long separated bows, and that's really difficult for most adults. Most of us in our teacher training, and most of you probably, will be like, oh God, like I can't, we very rarely do that bow stroke, especially on open E, as adults. And it's really, the kids don't find it hard. And it's really for us about finding that relaxing elbow, that scoopy elbow feeling, and being able to get the speed with the scoop and make it, really shine. So don't worry if you find that hard, because we all have in the past and sometimes still do. Okay, perpetual motion, first, fourth finger.
doubles, like all the way through, like fatter than a caterpillar. And for many of them, that'll be the first time they're really opening and closing the arm at speed. Obviously, they've been doing full bows, but it's not. Yeah, karate.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. And the other thing about this piece is that it's much longer. It has 3 sections, and they've got different ending each time except one of them, and then the first section comes back at the end, so it's much longer, and then we repeat the whole thing with doubles. So it's a real step up for them, and mostly they don't struggle with it too much. They really like that because each bit is quite easy, and apart from the 4th finger and the memory for some, it's not a mountain piece for most of my students, but it is definitely a big step up. And it's a great piece to do in mixed ability group classes because the babies can play and all the way through, even the ones that ends on the top A. I just keep them doing E and A because it fits with the harmony. So that's fun. Okay, and now we move into, we've already moved out of the folk song part of the book. And then the central part of the book we're thinking of as, does anyone remember from last week? Suzuki's pieces, studies, sort of etudes. Excellent. And now we're into the D major part as well. So we go on to Allegretto, and Allegretto and Andantino are alphabetical, and the first note of each is also alphabetical. Which we definitely don't want to do the first time they learn this piece, the up bow accents in Andantino. So don't fall into the trap of playing, because those are not the accented notes. It's just the those ones. Yep.
libretto that we have the first G string notes. But if you've been doing perpetual motion in D major, that won't make any difference at all. If you've been doing your twinkles on the G's and the D's, then they'll be ready for that. And we'll talk about that more in teaching points. Good. Next, mountain piece etude. So let's make a little list of firsts. First piece in G major, very good. First piece with all
low second.
with low second
Yeah.
and high second,
Yeah.
all at once. First piece that uses all the strings. First piece that's really difficult to remember. Like, this is one that most kids can't do just by ear from having listened at home. They actually need to practice bits and help have signposts about the memory. And then again, it's not the first time, but we've got the doubles again, and the string crossing is much more complicated than before.
Are we still using, this bow hold? When you switch?
So I put them in by perpetual motion at the latest, ideally around Allegro. Yeah, but it does depend on the hand size. If you've got a really tiny child, do I believe that? As I'm saying it, I'm like,
But I realized, for example, my son's thumb quite big, but my thumb is long as well. So he's doing this because it's quite a big. Those two fingers keep going top because it's big. So if you do that, it's going to.
but even if it's really big, that doesn't necessarily affect the fingers.
yes,
It's just
he's
training the fingers to
struggling
do
to
something
put-
else.
Yeah, he's struggling to put them.
But if you can do this, which you can,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how big it is. It's about training the fingers. It's not impossible.
I was thinking, is it about maybe his.
Yeah, I don't think it's the size. I think one of a really easy little thing that you can do, maybe Amy's already done it, is put a piece of paper underneath.
No, we are putting like some names. We put some names, Peep, Heap, and.
But on the middle fingers, he can hold a piece of paper here. So if he
Oh,
does
no,
this, if he does this, then the piece of paper will fall on the floor. You're welcome. It's really good. Yeah, and if you have loads of stickers, you can tear off. They can choose the sticker they want. You can tear it off, and then they get to keep it when they play the whole piece without dropping it on the floor. One teacher I know used to use Monopoly money as well, which was quite good. Like, oh, you get £5 if you can keep it. You get to keep it. She just got loads of Monopolies in second-hand shops or whatever. I find I have so many. I have my box of things that I use all the time, and then other things I think that's really cute. But I just I'm gonna end up with a whole building full of teaching materials that I can't. You have to be able to actually lay your hands on them at that moment in time that you need it for. So, anyway, okay. So etude. our students to do this because mostly they won't feel any need to do this until they're teenagers. And if you feel like if you leave it until they're teenagers, they'll be very resistant because they haven't got in the habit of it. So we regularly do like bendy pencil and twisty pencil and ragdoll. And be careful with your tops when you do that. And then the other thing, so my like massage therapist person who is amazing tells me the two most important things for me and for most like adult violinists, so it stands to reason it would be the same for the children, is the issue is that we play with coming forward all the time. So you want to stretch the muscles that are doing that work, part of which is in your back. So if you hold your hands like this and you're pushing your wrists away from you and then you put your head in the hole, don't bend over, but you should feel it between your shoulder blades. Do you feel that? So drop your head a bit more. Yeah, there you go. Does that feel better?
Yeah.
And you can experiment with how high and how low your head and your arms are, and you'll feel different parts. Do you feel it here? Do you know this stretch already?
No, I didn't do this.
Music colleges. Okay, and so then the counter stretch, so you can do, like all of this stuff, like how, you can draw pictures with that's quite nice to do with the kids, like you're like a timer, and you do a whole minute of being the timer, and then you can make it as big or as small as you want. And then the counter stretch to that is to take your hands and put them in your lower back and try and get your elbows together, and you'll feel your pecs will stretch then. Fun. And if you are like somewhere not in a group and not in a room, the other thing you could do for that is to walk through a door and leave your arms behind you like this. So, but it's the same muscles. Okay, we have 8 minutes for 5 pieces. That's not going to work, is it? Minuets. We get to the first real pieces of the book. Hooray! We get to play Johann Sebastian Bach. They're so excited to play someone they've heard of. And obviously they're really lovely pieces. The first time they play in 3/4. And many firsts coming up throughout those 3. So... There we go. So, minuet 2, we have the first slur, we have the first triplets, and we have the first extended third finger on the D sharp. So there's a lot. get through. I've already played this introduction once. Loads and loads of slurs. Stop talking. Happy farmer. First hooked bows in both directions with different lengths on each. And a new structure. Everything in the whole world, massive mountain piece. I teach this for a credit for 2 lines at a time, so it's like 4 pieces. Then we go into book 2, and then they come back and do the credit for the whole piece in one go because it is monumental.
kind to yourself.
Thank you very much. And look at that, we're 2 minutes late. Okay, so I will see you at 2. And Sarah, you're going to have your lesson next week, so you won't need your violin out.
Okay.
But come and take notes, and I'll just stop the recording. What usually happens, bye everyone.